Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, especially on a gloomy, rainy day like today. It takes special and extra effort. It means that we are looking for something more than what we have right now. So, tonight we're going to talk about vices and virtues. And I want you to kind of keep this page in mind for a little bit. We're going to come back to it once I get towards the front a little bit. Um, but before, let's see, then I can get everything working. Aha. All right. So before we start, I just want to give you some guidance as to where I got all of the material for tonight's presentation. They're coming from the Spirit's book. It has 4 books within the Spirit's book, and one of them is titled Moral Perfections. Chapter 12 is the first one, and guess what it talks about? Talks about passions, vices, and spirit virtues, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. It's mostly our Spirit's book. We do have a little bit from the Gospel according to Spiritism. We do have something from the Consoler, which was dictated by Emmanuel, and from Existential Conflicts by Joanna de Angelis. So before we start with the talk itself, let's just define what vices and virtues are, right? I like to start with that just because it gives us a little basis to start from. So vices, this is from the Webster's dictionary. Vice is defined as a physical or moral defect, an imperfection, right? Something that makes a thing or an act inappropriate or unfit for the purpose for which they were intended, or the effect it should produce. Something that makes something inappropriate or unfit for the purpose for which they were intended. So vice really is changing something that was made for a reason and making it not fit, right? Tendency to evil, habit of proceeding evil, unseemly action that is practiced by habit, unseemly action that is practiced by habit. So we're talking about habit again, right? And we're going to keep that word in mind for the rest of the presentation. Customary, custom, reprehensible, or objectionable. Moral or mental degeneracy of the person who usually acts against good manners, becoming pernicious element to the social environment or incompatible with it. On the other hand, a virtue is, sorry for the second one there, don't know what happened. A virtue is the habit of doing good, moral excellence, austerity in living, virtuous action, chastity, modesty, strength, inherent quality to produce certain or determined results, proprietary effectiveness. Inherent quality to produce certain or determined results. So it requires action from us. It requires some more energy from us in order to do so, right? Virtue comes from the Latin virtute, virtus, and that actually comes from the word strength. So a virtue really is a strength that we have, okay? Let's actually talk about this a little bit, right? In chapter 12 of the Spirit's book, question 908, the Spirits talk about passions, right? And they're saying that passions really are neither good or bad. It really depends on how we act on them. So let's talk about passions first. What are passions? Passions are not what we think of physical passions. Let's talk about moral passions, right? It is a attachment we have to something or someone or an action, right? So if I'm passionate about something, that in itself, it might not be good or bad. It depends on what I'm passionate about or how I act to get towards that one end result. Okay, so this is what we're told on question 908. So they're neither good nor bad, right? So I found it interesting because even in our Scrabble board, vices and virtues, they actually sum to the same, right? And I thought it was pretty cool. They sum to 10, if I'm not mistaken. That's what I counted. And I had to count about 20 times to be sure because I'm OCD. But, they actually are valued the same, neutral, right? How we act will dictate what they become, right? So in the Spirit's book, question 908, actually that was 893, sorry, this was 908. How may we define the limit at which the passion ceases to be good or bad? And the explanation that the Spirits gave us is this. Passions are like a horse that's useful when controlled, but dangerous when it controls, right? So if you think of yourself, if we think of ourselves being on top of a horse, it would be very hard to be on a horse that's not saddled, where we have no control, right? So passion is like that. As long as we are controlling it, it is very useful. We can actually control our energy towards something. But once we lose control of that, it becomes like a wild horse, and it becomes. So they continue to say, you can recognize when a passion becomes harmful at the moment in which you cease to govern it, and when it results in any injury to yourselves or to another. So passions are levers that increase humans' powers tenfold and help them fulfill the designs of providence. However, if instead of directing them, they allow themselves to be directed by them, they fall into excess, and the very power in which in their hands could do good falls upon them and crushes them, right? This is what the Spirits are telling us in the Spirit's book, question 908. This is a fantastic chapter. I actually started studying through the gospel, but when I went into the Spirit's book, I was fascinated by it. I continued reading more than what I needed, because it goes on with so many explanations and it makes sense, right? So once we allow them to control over us, the power in which in our hands could do good falls upon ourselves and crushes us. That's what you're telling us. So when we allow a vice, a passion to become a vice, or something that's pernicious, that's not good for us, it actually overcomes us, right? So if we ever heard someone say, oh, yes, I'm addicted to drinking or to marijuana or whatever it is, right? But it's okay because I can get out of it anytime I want to. And you hear that person say that for 20 years, right? We know that that passion has become a vice, and that vice now overcomes a person, right? I knew a friend who would actually steal or do whatever it took to maintain his habit or his passion, right? So every passion that brings us nearer to the animal nature takes us further from the spiritual nature. Every feeling that lifts us above the animal nature announces the predominance of the spirit over matter and draws us closer to perfection. So we have two sides, right? Either we elevate the spiritual, the moral, or we elevate the physical, the material, right? And that's what they're telling us. We can't have both. We cannot have the physical, the here, the now, the moment, and the spiritual, the elevation, the morals, right? Stephen Klein was a neuroscientist in the Enlightenment era, and he actually talked to us about, there's a book called The Science of Happiness, and in this book, he tells us that when we stimulate lower tendencies, right, lower pleasures, the feelings that we have, the initial feelings that we have, they are released in our body, serotonin and dopamine being the main happiness releasers that we have, right? They're released the same as when we're doing a good action, the exact same way. The difference is when we're doing a good action, they continue to go up, whereas when we are choosing coarse pleasures, as he puts it, it will go up and then straight down. So we don't stay in that plateau of happiness, right? So if we've ever done good, if we've ever gone to a nursing home, if we've ever given someone a minute of our time or sometimes a hug or however good we've done, right? It feels good. We carry that energy with us. We bring that with us everywhere we go. And every time we think about it, we feel that love, that energy. But when we do something that is of material or physical need or pleasures, it's great at the very moment, but 5 minutes can go by, or an hour, and whatever time it takes us to go down from that dopamine boost, the energy is gone. We no longer have that, and we need more of it in order to go to that same stage, right? That's how a vice becomes. We suddenly realize that we're not there anymore. What do we need to do? Oh, let me do that thing again. And we do something bad, or something that just requires that momentaneous pleasure, without realizing that there are other things that could help us stay in that plateau. So, so he talks about the reason why we do that is because for us, right, it's still easier to attain a momentary moment of happiness than to work hard to obtaining that steady moment of pleasure, right? So material pleasures, according to Klein, they're immediate, they're intense, they're easy, and they're usually selfish, right? It's all about me. I want this right now. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I don't care what happens to anyone else. So it's all about me, right? So some of you may have seen a book called No Solar, or actually there's a book and there's also a video. I'm going to show a little bit of the video at the end, but the video tells us the story of this doctor who died and went to the afterlife, right? And what's interesting about this story, and this is our turning point right now, is when he died, he was a doctor, right? And he didn't really do any bad to anybody, right? He didn't kill, he didn't deliberately go hurting somebody, anything like that. He was a person like me and you, right? We go on by our days, we go to work, we do what we have to do. I have a family at home, and he went on his life like this, right? He used to smoke here and there and drink a little bit, and he thought it was okay because he had hard days at work. He was a doctor, right? So he died, and instead of going to what he thought would be heaven, he went to the lower zones, and he actually spent 8 years there, where he was called a suicide, right? And he repelled that. I'm not a suicide. What are you talking about? How can you tell me I'm a suicide? He repelled that with all his might, without understanding that the little things that he did not do are the things that brought him to where he was, right? So when we die, we pass on from this life and move on to the life after life. What are the things we take with us? We take with us what we've done, right? One phrase I carry with me is, everything I have belongs to God, but everything I give belongs to me, right? Or everything I do belongs to me. So when we think of it that way, right? Anything that comes out from my heart, any actions, good and bad, that I do, that's what I'm going to take with me, right? So a vice is a tendency for us, or is a weakness to remain upright, right? So let me tell you about my biggest vice versus virtue: patience, right? You guys, if you've been here, if you've come in here, you've heard me talk about it many times. But patience, right? We don't lose patience. You know why we don't lose patience? Because if we're losing it, we've never had it, right? We have to acquire patience. We have to learn to be patient. So I sometimes have a little bit of patience. I'm learning to become more patient, but it's still a vice on my agenda, because I can tell you that I am patient all the time with everyone and in every situation, right? So those are the things, like I'm telling myself I'm going to be patient this week, I'm going to be patient, then I'm driving to work, or I'm driving here, and this crazy car cuts me off and he almost hits me, right? And what do we do, right? I mean, I take a deep breath, but what we really want to do, because I still feel it, I feel that energy, I refrain from doing anything, which is good, it's one step forward, but we still feel that energy. So I know I'm not patient, maybe that person had to rush to the hospital. I don't know. If I start changing the way I view the situation, I'll start becoming more patient. But I still don't have that patience where I understand everything. You see? So that's where a vice and a virtue walk side by side. So my passion in this case, or my habit, is to become impatient. So I have to recognize what I feel in order for me to work on it and to change that behavior, right? This is where we're talking about. So in the Astral City, in this book, No Solar, he goes to the lower zones for about 7 or 8 years, and once he's rescued, right, he's actually in the hospital, getting better, right? He finally wakes up and he's like, what am I? What happened to me? Why did I go to that place? And the nurse that's there to help him says to him, I'm looking at your chart. We'll have someone come and speak with you. It's too bad that you came as a suicide. And he gets very upset, right? Without understanding that. So that action, he didn't kill himself. Understand that. He did not deliberately kill himself. But the fact, every little thing that we do that goes against God's laws are killing us. We are killing ourselves. So every time I feel anger or impatient, I'm bringing that energy, right? So it's not just physically doing something bad, it's not doing something good, right? We've heard that before. It's not just about doing something good, it's about the fact that not about the fact about doing something bad, it's the fact that I'm not doing something good. So I am refraining from doing bad, but I'm still not doing good, right? So in the Gospel according to Spiritism, we're told that virtue at its highest level shall consist of the essential qualities that make up a good man. Being good all the time, being charitable, being kind to others, right? Hardworking. It takes effort from me and you to become a good person. So it's hard work. Being sober, we're not talking just sober as from alcohol or drugs. We're talking sober about decisions, life, everything that happens to us. We have to be, to take that step back and be able to see the bigger picture, not just that immediate selfish position that we tend to take. Being modest, right? These are the qualities of a virtuous man. Of course, these are often accompanied by small moral failures that discourage and weaken us, right? So I'm trying to be good here, I'm trying to be patient, and then this guy cuts me off, right? Really not his fault. Maybe, like I said, maybe he's going to the hospital, maybe I was driving too slow, it doesn't matter. But little things, I lost my patience. Now I'm like, oh, I'm back to ground zero again. I have to start over, right? It does cause us to do that. But we understand that every time we are tested, we take one tiny little step forward, So maybe 10 years ago, when someone cut me off, I would do, cuss them off or something, say something horrible. Today, I might not be the kindest person, but I'm already not doing that. So I'm already moving forward, right? So when we get discouraged, we got to remember where we came from to see where we are today. So what is the most worthy of all virtues? So the spirits tell us all virtues have their merit because they are all signs of progress on the path of good. All virtues have their merit, right? So even attempting to become virtuous, to do something, has a merit to it. A virtue always exists wherever there is voluntary resistance to knock evil tendencies. But the sublimity of the virtue consists in the sacrifice of self-interest for the good of others without ulterior motive. The most meritorious is one that is based on the most disinterested charity, right? It's giving without looking for return, right? It's being able to open our hearts or our houses or opportunities that we have without having to flaunt it. Oh, guess what? I went to the nursing home this weekend. I do that every Sunday because I am good, right? So I'm flaunting. I want to show everybody that I'm good. So I'm just hiding that goodness, right? But I'm actually trying to get my reward right here, right now. And a true virtuous person is someone that sacrifices their self-interest for the good of others. So you do something for the sake of doing something because you know it's a good thing. You don't need to go tell everybody, hey, listen, look, I'm going to go there and I'm going to give that homeless person some money. No one needs to know what we're doing, right? It's between us and God. We know that. So that is the biggest virtue. However, every virtue, every attempt of becoming a better person has a merit. And we need to remember that, especially when we fail. And we fail many times. So I'm going to read this because this comes from the Spiritist Review, Volume 6, and there was it's a Journal of Psychological Studies written by Allan Kardec. And this is what he tells us. Virtue is not entirely banished from the earth as some pessimists think. No doubt that evil still dominates earth, but when looking at the shadow, it is clear that under the weed there are violets. That's to say, there are more good souls than you think. So we're here, we're trying, right? If they're visible only in space intervals, it's simply because true virtue does not highlight itself due to its humbleness. It is content with the pleasures of the heart and the approval of conscience, whereas addiction manifests outrageously in broad daylight. It makes noise because it's proud. Pride and humility are the two poles of the human heart. One attracts all good, the other all evil. One has calm, the other the storm. Consciousness is the compass that indicates the route leading to each of them. Right? So we just talked about it, right? It's being able to give up self-interest for the good of others, right? So we have two poles where we can measure, and our consciousness will help us do that. So in my case of patience, right, whenever I am on the brink of losing it, I try to weigh in, what am I going to gain or lose if this happens? And I have to, or I do my best to go towards the better side of it, right? So consciousness is a compass that indicates the route leading to each of them. So some people that we know that have come, and these, for me, are some of the representations of true virtuous people, right? In one of the questions in the Spirit's book, they talk about who's more meritorious, a person that's able to do good without struggling, or a person that struggles to do good and fails sometimes. And the spirits tell us that the persons that are able to do good without struggling is because they've struggled in the past. They have overcome this. We can too. We will overcome it as well. So don't be discouraged because we can't be like Mother Teresa, who was giving every single day of her entire life. We give a little bit more every day, and we learn and we do that, But they tell us that if they have got to this point, it's because they have been where we are, So when we look at every one of these faces, we know that we can get there too. Jesus told us that we are created, we are gods. We can do everything He did and more, right? So we all have the ability to become that good, virtuous person. So
who's the gentleman on the
this is Chico Xavier. He's actually a medium, one of the mediums that wrote about 200 Spiritist books.
What's his name again?
Chico Xavier, Xavier, and the first name is Chico, Chico. 415, right? Right. So the entire collection from by Andre Luis, including the one that became a video, No Solar, was psychographed by Chico Xavier. And he was one of the kindest persons that we've had in Brazil, and of course all the different examples. You have Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Jesus, Pope Francis. So these are great examples. These are people that give without looking at home or without looking for a reason to give, So selfishness is probably our biggest enemy, right? Our biggest vice. So it is a target for which all true believers should direct their weapons, their strength, and their courage. It must disappear from earth because it prevents its moral progress. So as long as I am being selfish, I am not able to do good to anyone else, right? Or to myself for the matter. We can't forget self-love too. We need to learn that loving ourselves, loving others like we love ourselves is one of the guidelines that we were given by Jesus, right? So the spirits tell us, I say courage because this is the most necessary quality for us to conquer ourselves rather than to conquer others. So it takes courage, right? First thing, like if I give everyone a piece of paper here and I say, write virtues, vices about yourselves. It's easy for us to write our virtues that we believe we have, but it's hard to put in paper or to say to ourselves in the mirror all the vices that we have, right? So it takes courage. It takes courage for us to conquer ourselves. I can only overcome my vices if I know what they are. Let each one, therefore, devote all of its attention to fight it in yourself, as this devouring monster of all intelligences, the son of pride, is the source of all earthly miseries. It is the negation of love, and therefore the greatest obstacle to human happiness. Right? So we're saying that selfishness is the other pole from love. So we can either have one or the other in our hearts. We can have both. We can't be selfish and say I love everybody, right? Or I love myself even. So how do we fight selfishness, right? Easier said than done. So perseverance, it takes 21 days to kick a habit. That's what, there are some studies that tell us. It takes time, right? I want to break that habit. I can tell you, I've been working on patients for as long as I can remember, so. But I know, and I told you that I know, every time I fail, I know that I'm already doing better than I was doing 10 years ago. Hope, right? Understand, have that greater feeling within us that there's something better, something more out there, something that we deserve and we know we can get to. Be patient with ourselves, right, through the process. Whatever vice there might be that we might be working against, be patient. We are going to have drawbacks, but we will move forward. And have faith that we can do it. We were created like God, right? Jesus told us we are gods. We can do everything I did and more. You and I, every one of us, we can do everything, you know? So we can become great like those people that we just saw in the picture before. So faith is the innate feeling in man of his destination. So when we have faith, we know that we will get somewhere. We have a destination. We have a place to go to. It's a consciousness of prodigious ability that has as a seed within, first in latent state, but it should sprout and grow through its active will. So we all have faith as a little seed within our hearts. But as we know, with all seeds, it takes growing and developing. It takes time. We have to water it. We have to make sure there is enough sunlight. We have to make sure it's covered in times of need and things like that, right? So it's the same thing. So the more active we are in taking care of the little seed, the sooner, the better, the faster, and the stronger it will grow in us. Faith is human and divine. If all embodied creatures, all creatures that are in the incarnated world today, were sufficiently persuaded with the strength which they had within them, and if they wanted by their own will to serve that strength, they would be able to accomplish what today you call wonders, and that is but a development of the human faculties. So we can do everything and more, right? So once we realize the power, the strength we have within us, we can overcome any habits that we might want to get rid of. So some of the obstacles, we know that personal interest, right? Sometimes it takes a lot for us to go out to a nursing home or to do something. It's hard for some people. Material attachment, They often resemble moral qualities, such as copper object, where the gilding that cannot resist the touchstone. That means that when you cover something with copper, right, to fake something that's real, you can actually go with a stone and you can actually cut through it to show its real appearance. So what you're saying is, a lot of times we hide within ourselves, right? So I present myself as being a very, very patient person all the time, right? And in reality, I am not. But when I'm in front of somebody or you or everybody, I try to become that person. I'm not that person. So we cover ourselves a lot. So I can do something bad and then I come outside of the house, I try to fake that I don't do that. It's still within me. It doesn't matter how much I try to hide, right? So the attachment to material things is an evident sign of inferiority, because the more the man is related to the goods of this world, the less they understand their destination. So the two poles, right? We have a destination. We were created for greatness. So the more we are attached to the physical world, the less we understand the destination. The more we understand that we are a spiritual being living in this world, but we're not meant to remain here, the more we become detached from the material and we are able to sublimate ourselves. So the habit of virtue, when real, is reflected in all of our actions, from the simplest to the most complex, like the blood that circulates through the body. So there is no hiding, right? There's nothing that you can scratch the surface and show what really is there, because that's what's there. The habit of virtue is a result of a hard work for achievement. It takes effort, it takes time, it takes practice. To have such a habit is soft and sweet. Once we reach that, we have that same feeling of this serotonin and dopamine that comes over our body. We have that feeling for long, long periods of time. There's no up and downs because we remain in that state of gratefulness, of happiness, right? We know we've overcome something that we've been trying to for so many days or years or even lives. Its practice is a perennial source of endless pleasures. The difficulty is not in the exercise of virtue, but its opposite, which becomes the addictions, which in turn is the contracts of a virtue. So what's hard is not to be patient. What's hard is not to be impatient, right? Look at it the other way. If we're so used to being impatient, it's hard not to be impatient. That's what becomes my biggest fight, my biggest courage, is to become less impatient, right? So changing that a little bit. We must dethrone one element so that the other prevails. Addiction doesn't give in without a fight. Virtue tells us, here I am, take me, give me a place in your heart. But remember that between me and vice, there is an absolute incompatibility, right? I cannot be patient and impatient. See, if I say that I lose my patience, that means I've never had it. I haven't gained that virtue yet. That's what they're telling us. But we can do it, right? Virtues are here for us. They're here available, and it takes effort, it takes a lot of work, but we can do it. And just to finish, so this is actually, I think I have this ready already. This is the trailer for, hold on guys, I always have a hard time moving around here. This is the trailer for the movie No Solar.
It's not sent.
Yes. And hold on. The only reason why I want you to see that, I just want you to think about where we are and really where we want to be, right? And how do we get to that place? And the movie, I believe you can buy that online. I've seen that at Amazon. I don't know if we have any here right now, but the book is equally as amazing. I've read that book 3 times, and every time I read, I learn something new about it. So, all right, so here we go. hold on. Where is the subtitle? No, I'm looking for the subtitle. There was English subtitle. Hold on. So he died, right? And then this is him at the end of his road. So when we go, this is where our story really begins. So that was 8 years of suffering in the lower zones. I don't know where the sound is. So basically here he's asking what happened, why were they calling him a suicide? He didn't understand anything that was going on with him. And this is a spiritual city, right? A place, one of the places, similar to many of the places around every city in the world. And these are the places we go after we move on. And life continues on the same way it continues here. So the other side is closer than what we imagine. And sorry guys, I thought I had picked the one with the subtitles, so I really apologize for that. But it just gives you an idea, right? We don't stay here physically or spiritually.